All right. Thanks, Sam. Well, it is a crazy time indeed, and Dallin will stop me before I go too long and bore you with hours of this. But let me just give a quick recap on what's gone on in the last week for those who have not been paying attention. So the next slide, Dallin. So starting a couple weeks ago, Trump announced 10% tariff on everybody, and then a big slate of tariffs on all kinds of countries that went from 10% up to like 90%. And then a couple days later, China comes back with a reciprocal tariff, another 34% on US goods. Other countries talk about doing a counter tariff. The market crashes. The next week, some of the tariffs kick in right away. Some of them take a while to go. But over the course of the week, then Trump lifted some of the tariffs or paused them for 90 days, except not China. So China bumped their tariffs up. U.S. bumped tariffs up on China. They say there's a lot of discussions going on. It's hard to tell exactly what they mean. There's been countries that have announced that they dropped all tariffs on U.S. goods, but when you get into the details, it's a little thinner than that. It's limited to categories like nuts or something else. And then the U.S. has said even if they go to 0% tariffs, that's not good enough. They've got to do other stuff. So it's kind of a wild time. Nobody really knows for sure what's happening. And a lot of businesses are really sweating bullets right now. There was one example of a ship that left China, supposed to leave China before the deadline, but was delayed by something and left one day later. Well, that is thousands of containers of goods, millions of dollars of goods, which are going to be subjected to an extra 125% tariff. So that ship leaving one day late probably means that hundreds of businesses will go bankrupt in the US. So it's very scary for a lot of companies. So let's go on and see how that affects us. Well, we are pretty well set up. Like Sam mentioned earlier, we don't do the traditional smart thing that companies have done in the last 30 or 40 years where they get a ton of debt to be extremely capital and tax efficient. We kind of do things the dumb way and have no debt so that when these kinds of disruptions happen, which happens all the time, we're not out of business. It's something that is not a great thing, but we can survive it. Another thing we've done is we've built out manufacturing hubs in different countries around the world. And that's not because labor is cheap in Vietnam or something like that. It's actually, our focus has always been if we have a lot of sales in Vietnam, then that's where we want to build a factory there to support those local sales. The same thing in Korea. I mean, sometimes we have brought Unicity Korea product into the US when we had a sales surge, super helpful for those times. But the primary goal and 90% of what they do is actually for Korea. And same with the US. We do export to a lot of countries, but most of our focus with building our factories is to support the market where they're in. We also have those distribution centers, and yeah, you can go to the next slide. So these tariffs are not new. We've kind of been in a high tariff world for a long time where Unicity operates. I mean, I started with Unicity in Thailand. I lived there for about 5 years, and we were working a lot in Southeast Asia and Asia in general. And a lot of these countries have very high duties. India, for example, at that time was over 100% of import duty. And that's why we do some manufacturing in India. And some of these other countries in the world, even though they don't necessarily have a tariff, they have other barriers to entry. So they don't really want you to import goods. They want you to make it there or use some other partner. So over time, we've developed a lot of tools in our toolkit. One of them is these free zones. So we have those strategically placed around the world, and it allows us to bring in the key ingredients or key parts of the product, and then we do the rest of the assembly there. And then it also allows us to defer the duty until we're ready to sell the product. Okay. The main advantages we have, like I mentioned, local production where it's possible. That limits how much we have to cross borders. So especially for the US, if we can buy or source an ingredient in the US, we do that almost always. And we've steered away from Chinese ingredients for a long time because there's some quality concerns. We test everything we get anyway. We test it for all kinds of heavy metals or contamination, DNA testing on all of our ingredients that we use. But we've kind of already known for the last 10 or 20 years that China was an extra risk. So we steered away from those and really tried to focus on places where we're doing business. One of the, I guess, blessings that we've never opened in mainland China is that we don't have to worry about this trade war as much as some other companies. And then the last thing is the rapid shifting. So we have a great team. Here's some of our team in this picture in Korea. We have a team of basically ninjas. We used to joke that we had an emergency every year. One year it was protests in Thailand that closed the airport. The next year it was a huge flood in one of our major markets and everything was underwater. And this last year we've had some disruptions in Korea with their political situation. So every year there's something that's happening that's kind of a crazy emergency, and we just have to be good at adapting. So some of the ways that we adapt is like in the last couple of years, we've had really rapid growth in your market in the US and Canada. And so it overwhelmed the capabilities that we had in the US at that time. And so that's why we brought in production from Korea, from our facility there. We sent some of our powder out to a third party to package. I don't know if you guys noticed, but some of the balanced sachets last year were slightly thinner than the other ones. And that's because we brought in another partner that we trusted to help us package some of that. So very flexible. Like I said, we have a team that has dealt with emergencies and these tariffs. So they're pretty good at changing on the fly. They don't sleep a lot right now. Another thing that we've done is a lot of deep vertical integration. So we have to know where our material is coming from. And like I mentioned, here's a picture of me this is in southern Brazil. So we know exactly what trees are growing the mate. Fortunately, Brazil got only a 10% duty, and that's been delayed 90 days. So we've managed to bring in a whole lot of yerba mate in that time. But a 10% duty is not gonna kill us. There's also talk of a trade agreement with Argentina that would be zero duty. And they also a great source. We have a lot of great connections there for yerba mate. Here's another thing that we're working pretty hard on. This is running right now this is in Korea, but we'll have 4 of these machines soon in Las Vegas. So what this allows us is, a lot of the reason that other companies have moved some of their production overseas is because of labor cost and the ability to hire and scale up quickly. And the way we're approaching that is through greater automation. So this is not only automating the packaging, nobody ever has to touch it, but also putting it in the box and stacking on the pallet. So we can do things a lot faster with fewer people. Actually, we'll have the same number of people, even a few more, but we'll add more lines. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is another really important um, thing is that we have a really good R&D team, both in mostly in Utah in the US and then in Singapore. And these guys are super smart. The person in the picture is actually one of our quality people, but so they're super smart because when we have things that happen like these trade wars and we can't maybe get an ingredient, there's almost always another thing we can get. We just have to adapt and we have to make sure that it's a suitable replacement, and then we have to move fast to get it and lock it in. So we have a R&D team working nonstop on we so far to update you, we don't know of anything that we're going to have a real problem with. However, there's a few things that we think could be a problem. So we're lining up some backups just in case. So I think that all of this preparedness, I mean, I feel like Unicity is a little bit like an all-terrain vehicle. Like whatever happens, we're pretty well prepared. If there is more disruption and volatility and chaos, that's usually where we do the best. And I think that's why we've been very successful in some of these markets that are difficult to predict. And it becomes a competitive advantage for us. I think that there's going to be a lot of companies. I mean, Temu and Shein and other e-commerce companies that have been selling stuff directly from China are basically dead now in the US. People are still going to spend the same amount of money, and we have a good advantage to get some more of that purchasing dollars. I think that it's a competitive advantage for us as we're able to hopefully maintain our prices without going up, and some of our competitors may have to raise their prices quite a bit because they're not set up as I would say intelligently. The other thing that we have is we have a really strong commitment to doing things both efficiently and ethically. So to sum up, we're prepared for tariff uncertainties. I want you to know that we do have a really, really adaptable and intelligent team that we've dealt with these things for 15 years now in some really crazy times. This may be one of the craziest times in the US, but it's not the craziest time globally. We also have a really robust and flexible network with our manufacturing around the world, where we'll be able to adjust. Last month we had a lot of there was a lot of not last month. I can't remember the last trade war, but there was one with Canada that didn't last very long, thankfully. Could come back. But we confirmed that we can actually support Canadian volume from Korea. Obviously, same quality product, and that would be zero duty. So we've set that up and we're prepared for it. Anything that happens, we're going to be able to adapt pretty quickly. And then the main thing is that we prioritize the quality of the product. So whatever else happens, we're going to make sure we have the best, absolute best quality. And actually, that's really come to our advantage because we have not very much exposure to Chinese ingredients because we've gone for the high quality stuff.